Well, hello, Matt Latchaw.
Hello, Angela.
This is Angela Pancella speaking to you from the Moriah Piecast. Hello, one and all who are listening to this, whoever you may be. Matt Latchaw is, why don't you tell the good people out in podcast land who you are?
Sure. So my name is Matt Latchaw. I've been involved with Moriah Pie for a couple of years, but right now my role is can be a lot of things, but I spend most of my days growing food in the neighborhood and serving it on Friday nights to folks who come to Moriah Pie.
Nice. How did you first get involved?
So a couple of years ago, Aaron and Robert, who started Moriah Pie, were running a residential internship based around the work in the neighborhood.
Don't let me interrupt you, but by any chance is that Aaron and Robert Lockridge?
That's right. Yeah, Aaron and Robert Lockridge. And they, at that time, they were looking for a way to kind of engage the theological implications of the work and the kind of motive behind the work in almost an academic type of setting. And so my wife Lyric and I had just moved to Cincinnati that year and had been introduced to Aaron and Robert through a mutual friend who said, you've got to meet these folks and then see the restaurant they're doing. They also happen to be doing this internship. So we met Aaron and Robert, had dinner with them, and after they invited us to hear more about the internship, we decided to go ahead and join up and live in community in Norwood and work in the gardens, work at Moriah Pie. So that was about 3.5 years ago.
What year was that?
That was 2016.
Okay.
So
we are recording this in September of 2019.
That's right. May of 2016 was when we moved to Norwood.
On my mother's birthday, we are recording this.
Oh,
September
wow.
10th.
That's amazing.
2019.
Well, happy birthday to your mother.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's how it got started. And after the internship that year, we just really had fallen in love with the vision, with the people, and with the neighborhood, with the actual place. And so Lyric and I bought a house just down the street, a couple of blocks away, and stayed involved in different ways over the years. Mm-hmm.
So what's been the most surprising thing about stepping into leadership?
I think that I've found a kind of something I hadn't ever felt before, which is like a combination of satisfaction and exhaustion that I have heard people talk about, of kind of this feeling of purpose in work, and I had just never experienced it. And I thought, I don't know if that's going to happen for me, but I have found so many moments, every day can be different, but many moments of truly feeling my exhaustion in my body and my mind, feeling just very much like my energy is spent, but at the same time, feeling rejuvenated in my spirit, not to be too dualistic about things. That's been something that's been very surprising and very exciting too.
Do you feel like that's something that may set you apart from some of your peers? Like when you're talking to friends, do you find, because there's a lot of folks who have great dissatisfaction in their day-to-day work lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a rare thing in our culture to have that, and yet there's something in us and in our culture that says that we should have that it's almost a right or an entitlement that you should have that satisfaction in your work. And I believe that everyone, I want to believe that everyone can find that for them. What is their the kind of unique crossroads of their passions and the needs of their community and things like that. But yeah, I haven't encountered too many people who have had a lot of experiences like that in their work, especially a lot of younger folks my age. I'm 28 and a lot of my friends are in jobs that they either don't care for, they're kind of a means to an end, or There's just maybe it doesn't feel like the same sense of purpose. This is another part of it too that I wonder, not to go too far into a rabbit hole, but there's something about a lot of jobs and careers. And I experienced this because I quit my job as an IT person at University of Cincinnati. There's something about the exhaustion piece, the bodily, mental, spiritual, emotional exhaustion that I think plays into the satisfaction or opens up the possibility for it, because I would be, sitting at my desk for 8 hours a day, solving problems, helping people. And I would have that similar kind of exhaustion of just feeling totally empty, but without any kind of satisfaction. So I think that a lot of jobs in our culture are set up to not to be disconnected from any kind of purpose or any kind of bigger picture. It's more of here's your role, fulfill this little portion. And that's nothing new. That's been going on for a long time. But I've found a lot of my peers aware of that. Something's missing here. Well, what's going on? People just still haven't found what they're looking for in a lot of ways. And I really hope that, my prayer and hope for people is that they are, continue to seek out, in conversation with their community, what that could be, not in a kind of abstract, you've just got to find it. It's out there somewhere. It's almost like the kind of, you got to find the one that you're supposed to date and supposed to marry. It's this one thing. And if you could only find the one thing, I don't think it has to be one thing. It can be unique to a moment of where when you find that urge that, comes up in you and when you hear of something that's wrong, so you're saying someone should do something about this. Maybe that person could be you.
Well, not only that, but the analogy to marriage you just made me think about how in our culture currently there is a certain sense that the one is the one, your complete romantic, interpersonal life coach, partner in everything that fulfills every need you have as a human being, whereas in community, you have a number of people who are in your life for a number of different reasons. And similarly, your work with Moriah Pie and the Gardens, you mentioned was multifaceted, right? You're not just rolling dough. You're not just making pie crusts.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a good way of putting it, because maybe for someone it wouldn't be a career that's the kind of giving them that purpose. Maybe it's not fair to expect that of a work all the time. So maybe it's something more like communal, community that you find yourself in, where maybe your job at the moment isn't giving you that purpose, but maybe it's just not the time for that. Maybe you can find other things that do. Because definitely in the same way that our culture kind of glorifies this vision of the all-encompassing, all serving, it's all for you, type of romantic relationship. Yeah, it's this idea that it's kind of glorification of like, well, if you could just find that one job that, fits all of your needs and also pays really well and has health insurance and all these things, maybe it's just unfair to ask that of a job. And we need to seek out other ways of finding that fulfillment and that passion.
The role I see you in the most when I am hostessing for Moriah Pie is I come back to the kitchen and you are rolling dough, you are making sure that things are working in the kitchen and people know which pizza they're making next, and captaining. What is your hope for those who experience Moriah Pie? What is it that you hope that they experience?
That's a good question, because it can be tempting for me, and I think for Moriah Pie as an experience of those of us who are kind of behind the scenes, is to allow the expectations of a typical restaurant to kind of drive things, where it can be easy to want everyone to be happy and everyone to have their needs met and fully satisfied. And that's, I think, not a bad thing for everyone to be happy at all.
Everyone, did you just hear Matt does not actually want you to be happy when you come to Moriah Pie, just so you know.
I won't disagree with that. But I will say that's not the complete picture. I think there's something that we want to cultivate that's deeper than happiness. We want people to be happy. There's
something deeper than happiness?
There's a couple of books I can think of written about that. Maybe folks can check it out. But what I really long for is for people to feel welcomed, whoever they are, wherever in life they find themselves, whatever stage of life, whatever type of person they, think of themselves as, and for people to find a sense of belonging, I think is the ultimate goal for people to find, to feel themselves invited and kind of drawn in to the experience, to the story, and I hope that people find their imagination ignited towards, curiosity, towards creativity, towards generosity. I think I want people to see that because they are welcome, they have something to give, something to offer, and we want to cultivate that the same way we cultivate our crops. We want to encourage that growth and that engagement, connectedness, and so that could look like a lot of things. But that's a long way of answering the question. I didn't say just one answer. It's not happiness, but it's a lot of other things. Yeah.
The words you're using make me think of theology. I feel like there's some theological perspective that's woven into this whole experience. Has there been a shift in your theological perspective through this experience?
Yeah, another good question. I'm sure there has been. I wonder if I'll be aware of it right away. I think I don't know if, I have a kind of conscious awareness of that, any shift right now, but I do feel like I have a new experience of theology in like less of an abstract way.
Well, where did you start out in your journey in God?
How long is this podcast supposed to be?
How much room is on that little computer of yours?
Oh, a lot. Gosh. So I grew up being at church a lot. My dad was a pastor, and so I was there physically a lot.
And what kind of church was this?
Yeah, it's kind of an evangelical church in Iowa, where I grew up. So kind of Midwestern, small town, evangelical church. Kind of similar to like a Baptist approach or liturgy. A generally welcoming, kind of nurturing, positive environment. I think that a lot of my journey to where I am now is kind of a response to some of the facets of that world. I think I've going through college and after college, I think I've longed for a kind of rootedness, connectedness, kind of a physical, tangible, expression of that faith. And for me, I find myself very compelled and drawn in by remembering that God made my body. He made the earth, and that one way that I might learn about God is to enter more deeply into understanding and relationship with God's creation, including myself, my neighbors, with the physical dirt that we came from. And I think that, I've really appreciated having a more tangible, physical engagement and evidence of God's creativity, God's provision, God's welcome and generosity. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that a split has happened between an understanding of the body and the spirit in our general American theological experience?
I think absolutely so. I think there's been a huge emphasis in general. I'll speak from my background in the evangelical church. Is definitely I experienced an emphasis on it's all about faith without works is dead. That's kind of an important passage for evangelicals, that our belief comes first, and it's kind of the most important piece. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think, however, that it can lead to this understanding, and maybe it's an implicit understanding, maybe it's never spoken explicitly, but that all you need is kind of a mental assent of, you say you believe this is true, you say it's true, it's all in your brain. It's all kind of a conscious, I agree with that. I affirm that. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. And it's not a bad thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I think that's really important, but I think it can minimize the importance of relationship when you focus on the kind of the individual. This is my self-contained, I'm an island of, isolation, and I believe this. Yeah, it's just, that's all it is. And it can lead to a kind of disconnectedness that I think is prevalent in all of our culture. Mm-hmm. And I think not by anyone's fault. I don't think anyone is set out to do that on purpose. I think it's just the driving powers of our culture have kind of fed into that idea that it's all, the most important thing is me and my own decision, my own mental choice. And I think it can minimize that importance of context, of culture, of relationship, of neighbors, when in the end of the day, you can always just return to, well, that's not what I think, and that doesn't make sense to me. I don't agree with that. And so you can shut out anything that isn't already in you. So that's something that, how did we get on that tangent?
Does not even matter.
Yeah.
Trust the process. We have been talking a little bit about relational energy, then the connection between people. You've been living now in Norwood since 2016.
That's right.
And before you took on and when did you take on you quit your job and you, with Lyric, your wife, and you both quit your jobs and moved full-time into the gardens in Moriah Pie? When was that? So
that was in February of this year,
February 2019.
So, yeah.
And so your relationship with Norwood itself has shifted during that time, has it not? Have you seen a shift in your perspective on Norwood through this experience?
Oh, definitely. It's mostly small things. I notice, the way that the sidewalk is cracked and how I need to avoid it with my wheelbarrow. Or I notice, just yesterday, I noticed there's an apple tree in the parking lot of the Board of Elections building. And little things like that kind of have excited my curiosity about the physical place of Norwood. You know, who would expect in this asphalt landscape a small but persistent and beautiful apple tree making fruit.
Sounds like Norwood, Ohio. Who would expect a small but persistent asphalt world?
Yeah, definitely. I've come to know the physical land in a deeper way because I am not just driving my car, leaving the neighborhood, or, you know, in my case, I was, you know, riding my bike to the university, and kind of is easy to pass through my neighborhood more than be in my neighborhood. So yeah, just little things, noticing fruit trees. I'm always on the lookout, and
It is September.
Yes. But more engagement with people too, just knowing more people's stories. It definitely invites a lot of attention when you're pushing a wheelbarrow down the sidewalk, avoiding cracks, or climbing up an apple tree with someone's permission and picking apples by the crateful. Someone might stop and ask a question, and it's a beautiful invitation to engage with someone new, to hear someone's stories. So many moments of hearing all kinds of different people's experience in Norwood, you know, from folks who have been there for 50 years to stories of people who just moved there, who just arrived from out of town. And I think I feel like I've experienced the varied story of the people of Norwood. There's all kinds of diversity and unique folks who, like I said, have been there a long time, maybe a short time. Maybe their parents are from there. Maybe they've moved back. Maybe there's all kinds of stories that, of people who also call Norwood home.
What's going on in the gardens?
Let's see. This week it is forecast to be pretty warm in the 90s, and that's good news for nightshades. That includes tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, and so it's good. It's good news for the harvest. We've been harvesting lots of tomatoes, especially freezing them. Just today I was freezing some tomatoes for the winter months and spring months before tomatoes are back again. We recently received some pawpaws from Norwood.
Did you see I brought you some more pawpaws?
Yes, absolutely. And we've been, de-seeding those, taking the skin off, and preserving those as well for some future unknown adventures in probably desserts. This time of year is a lot of harvesting, a lot of processing and preserving. But also, just last week, we put in some new seedlings, some brassicas. So that includes kale, kohlrabi, cabbage, as well as others. And those seedlings need a lot of tender care and support, especially in the hot days. So some watering gently of these little bits of creation. So it's a very busy time of year. Mm-hmm.
That's exciting, brassicas. And you mentioned eggplant, which makes me wonder if Mediterranean pizza is going to be on the menu anytime soon.
It's definitely in the running. We are hoping to be able to serve it. The eggplants have been struggling this year a little bit, but we all agreed that Mediterranean was a fantastic recipe, and people really seem to enjoy it. It showcased things really well. So we're hoping that in the coming weeks we'll be able to, but there's no definitive answer yet.
Okay. Favorite recipe or a favorite trick of the kitchen that you can share with us?
Sure. I just learned this recently. I'm always in my spare time reading and watching videos about cooking and about these types of things and new recipes and techniques. I learned something new about garlic that I was corrected. I had always assumed that when you're cooking with garlic, a clove of garlic has the same amount of flavor in it that it will always have. You can chop it finely, you can chop it coarsely, and eventually all that flavor will get out. But I learned that a lot of the flavor comes not just from the clove of garlic, but from an interaction between different chemical compounds inside the garlic. So when you crush or chop or otherwise kind of tear the cell walls of garlic, these compounds come into contact and create something new. That's the garlic odor and taste that everyone is familiar with. And so one clove of garlic, if you chop it coarsely, it's as if it will have less flavor than if you chop it finely.
Huh.
And then on top of that, I always thought, I'll just add the garlic in and it'll kind of cook out the flavor and spread all throughout. That's not necessarily the case because at a certain temperature, that reaction of those two compounds is shut down. And so if you toss the garlic in too early in the process, when the dish is hot, you may kind of counteract that process, and there may not be as much flavor as there could be if you kind of added it early or added it right at the end. And so I've been doing it wrong for years, and I never knew. So that was something I got excited, kind of geeked out about when I learned. So I'm thinking if I have some spare time, I want to do like a lab trial of, chop it to a certain size, then a smaller size, then kind of really, mince it, and then just experiment and see if I can tell the difference with my, with my mouth and my nose and not just with my brain.
You can use all of us Moriah Pie customers as your guinea pig.
We'll have a side of just garlic. Everyone will love it.
Moriah Pie is open Friday nights, 4:30 to 9:30, pay-as-you-can pizza in West Norwood at the corner of Carter and Mills Avenue. Closing down for the season right after Thanksgiving. So come visit. Matt Latchaw, thank you for being on the Moriah Piecast.
Thanks so much, Angela. It's great